marked. I did not rule on them. They were drawings of Otto Miller Hall made by various witnesses. Those were exhibits 46 and 50, so I'm formally admitting them for illustrative purposes only. Obviously, you saw them during the time the witness was drawing them. Ms. Berliner?
Thank you, Your Honor. And by way of stipulation, the next witness's testimony will be Hannah Judge by way of video deposition, which has been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 62. And I guess I would move to admit it and publish it.
I'll grant that request. Members of the jury, you're going to be given testimony from a deposition. A deposition is testimony of a witness taken under oath outside of the courtroom. The oath is administered by an authorized person who records the testimony word for word. In this case, it's videotaped. Depositions are taken in the presence of the lawyers for the parties. The deposition will be presented to you, and insofar as possible, you must consider this form of testimony in the same way as you would consider the testimony of a witness who is present in the courtroom. You must decide how believable the testimony is and what value to be given to it. A copy of this deposition DVD may go with you, but it's not going to be played again. It's exactly the same as all the other witnesses. They're presented one time. You won't be getting copies of their transcripts, and so this is your one and only time to see the testimony. All right, you may proceed with the playing of the deposition.
Thank you.
After the TV warms up.
On record. We're on record. Time now is 9:04 a.m. Today's date is August 10th, 2016. This is Media Unit 1, Volume 1 of the video deposition of Hannah Judd. Case number is 141029019 in the matter of the State of Washington versus Aaron Ray Ybarra, filed in the Superior Court for the State of Washington in King County. This deposition is taking place at the King County Courthouse, courtroom W921, located at 516 3rd Ave, Seattle, Washington, 98104. I am the videographer, Dan Bassett, for SRS Premier Real-Time Reporting and Legal Video, located at 2200 6th Avenue, Suite 425 in Seattle, Washington. Our court reporter is Sarah Fitzgibbon, also for SRS Premier Real-Time Reporting and Legal Video. Counsel, all present, please identify yourselves for the record, and then the witness may be sworn in.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Berliner from the King County Prosecutor's Office.
Ramon Brandes from Northwest Defenders Division of the King County Department of Public Defense.
Defendant Mr. Ybarra is also present. Yes. Good morning, ma'am. Can you state your full name and spell it for the court reporter?
Hannah Tay Judd, HANNAHTAYJUDD.
Ms. Judd, how old are you?
I am 25.
Where do you live?
I live currently in Capitan, New Mexico.
How long have you lived in New Mexico?
Almost, or just over 2 years.
Are you employed?
Yes.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an assistant manager.
My understanding is you're moving to Australia, is that
Yes.
correct? Well, what are you doing in Australia?
I'm going to work as an au pair.
When are you moving?
August 21st.
How long do you expect to live in Australia?
1 year.
Did you go to college?
Yes.
Where did you go to school?
Seattle Pacific University.
When did you graduate?
Yes.
When did you graduate?
June of 2014 was the last time I took classes, but I did not get my degree till June of 2015.
Tell us a little bit about your time at SPU. Did you start there as a freshman or did you transfer in?
I started there as a freshman.
And what was your major? What did you study there?
General engineering with a mechanical focus.
How long were you there?
5 years.
And so what is ultimately your degree in?
General engineering with a mechanical focus. Yes.
Classes from the school was in June of 2014.
but you obtained your degree in June of 2015, is that correct? Were you still in the Seattle area when you obtained your...
No.
Okay. And you'd already moved to New Mexico by that
Yes.
time? So in June of 2014, and specifically on June 5th of 2014, were you a student on campus of SPU?
Yes.
Do you recall when a shooting occurred on that day?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing before the shooting occurred, where you were at, what was going on with your day?
I was in the rear parking lot of Otto Miller Hall helping another student with a project for one of his classes, and we were putting away equipment when we heard that there had been an incident and a shooting, and so I went to the front of the building to see if I could do any assistance and try to get people to go into lockdown, which is when I saw Sarah Williams, and then assisted her until SWAT and paramedics showed up.
Okay. Now, let me back you up a minute. You said that you were in the rear parking lot of Otto Miller Hall, is that right?
Yes.
What's that? What were you doing in the rear parking lot? I think you said you were helping a friend, but what exactly were you doing?
He was working on a physics project, and so we had large equipment out in the parking lot trying to measure the temperature of the sun.
Do you remember his name?
Jonathan Benchak.
Okay. And so was this a project that you were doing for a class as well, or you just flat out helping a friend?
I was helping him.
And what, can you describe sort of what that back area, other than being a parking lot, what it is? Like, how did you get your equipment out there and all that?
We rolled it out the rear door, which is next to the engineering lab, and so it's big telescopes and stuff like that. So we just rolled it out that rear door and had it sitting in a parking space while we recorded different data.
How long were you guys out there?
I think we were out there for almost 2 hours.
Do you remember what time it was? Was there a class period, or did you just work on it?
We had finished a class, which, if I can remember correctly, ended at about 1 o'clock, and then we went out to go work on it. It was about 3 o'clock, about the time that we were putting equipment back in, and I was getting ready to leave.
And you mentioned sort of the engineering lab. Is that, if we were looking at a map of Otto Miller Hall, is there a room that we can see where you would have been? Is there a name for the room?
I went blank on it, but it's the room that has all the welding equipment and lathes and things. It's in that back corner of that building.
Is it the same one that has the big garage doors that can be opened and people work inside and out? Okay. And then I think you said you learned that there was a shooting or something happened. What was the first thing that sort of called to your attention that something unusual was going on that day?
There was a female student repeating that somebody was dead, which I assumed was something to do with the large equipment in that room. So I asked her to explain what happened, and that's when she said there had been a shooting. And so I told them to lock down and get in the room.
Okay. So when you first, this female was saying someone's dead, tell us, like, was she standing there with you the whole time?
We're in the doorway near that engineering lab.
Where did she come from? Had she been working out there?
She was standing in that doorway. I don't know whether she had been in that room or she had been in the hallway.
Do you know that student?
No, I do not.
Do you know what she looks like? Do you remember?
I do not remember.
Okay. Tell us just a little bit. She just said someone's dead. Was she saying it matter of fact? What was her demeanor?
She was yelling and very afraid, from what I could tell.
And who was she saying this to?
She was telling it to us that was coming in and to everyone else that was in that engineering lab.
How many people were in that area, do you recall?
I think there were somewhere between 5 and 10. I don't know an exact number.
And you said that she said there was a shooting. Did you guys ask her questions, or how did her story come out?
I said, what happened? And she said, somebody's been shot, they're shooting, and so I told her to just get in the room and lock down, because I knew no matter what happened, they needed to be safe.
So I think you originally said you assumed it was something to do with the equipment that y'all were dealing with. Okay. Was she with anybody that you recall? Was there anybody else that was sort of...
There were other people around, but because I don't know her, I don't know if she was with anybody in particular.
Did you see anybody at that time around that had been injured or looked like they had been shot?
No, ma'am.
And so then you told folks to lock down, is that right?
Yes.
What did that mean? What were you telling people to do?
Close the doors, turn off the lights, hide.
And do you know if everybody did that?
I know that they closed that door as I ran towards the front of the building.
Okay. So then, you said you ran towards the front of the building.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
My first instinct was to make sure that everyone was safe, and to do that, they needed to be in lockdown. And so I just started yelling, turn off lights, hide. I don't recall saying that there was an actual shooting because I don't think I wanted to incite more fear or panic. So I just yelled, get in lockdown, lock the doors, stuff like that.
And tell us a little bit about the building, because you talked about being in the outside parking lot and the lab, but how is it that you're running toward the front of the building?
I ran down, if you're facing the front of the building, it's down the right hallway. So from the rear of the building towards the front.
Inside the building?
Inside the building.
Okay. And is that classrooms and labs that are in there as well?
Yes.
Did you see other students as you ran toward the front of the building?
No. Well, not until I got to the front of the building.
Do you, in this yelling kind of saying lockdown, who are you saying that to?
Just, I knew that classes are happening and there's got to be students and professors and, staff around. So whoever can hear me, hopefully they're hiding at that point.
Where was the female that had first told you there was a shooting? Where is she at this
She
point?
went into that engineering lab when they locked down
So was anybody kind of running with you, or are you just by yourself?
by myself.
Had you, at that point, when this gal came and said that, had you heard anything unusual or that sounded like a shooting? Okay. And then I think you indicated you found Sarah, is that right?
Yes, I saw another student first that I do know near the front of that hallway. Her name is Bree Clark, and I saw her and I asked if she was hurt. She said no, and I told her to go hide. And then I saw Sarah standing behind the stairs.
So tell us a little bit, when you get down that hallway and you come to the front, what does that look like? How does that open up?
The hallway ends and there's a little jut where there are professors' offices. There's kind of behind the stairs, which has the water fountain, which is where Sarah was standing. There's a staircase that comes down, and then there's the main lobby.
So where did you see Bree Clark when you first?
She was at where that hallway is, from what I can remember, right before the lobby.
Did she look like she'd been hurt, or why did you ask her that?
I didn't see any injury, but I wasn't sure, and so I just asked her.
And then I think you said you saw Sarah as she was standing, is that right? Tell us about what Sarah was. So what did you, when you saw Bree Clark, you told her to go hide, and then you saw Sarah, what did you do then?
I went towards her and tried to get her, because my thought was to get her down the hallway and as far away from that big glass window that is on the front of Otto Miller Hall and away from the staircase where she's in an open space, get her hopefully to somewhere safe. As I was going towards her, I looked over and I saw John Meese, who I know, on top of somebody on the ground. John yelled something, I don't recall what it was, and I got to Sarah and we got partway down the hallway before she collapsed against the wall and fell to the floor.
Okay. Let me ask, now by the time you get there, Sarah's clearly injured. Had you heard anything that sounded like shots or screams or anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And you said you turned, you saw John Meese, somebody you knew from school, presumably?
Yes.
Okay. So what sort of, if you're standing there, where's Sarah in relation to you, and where's John and this person he's on top of?
Sarah is in front of me, still behind the staircase, and I looked over, and near the front entrance of Otto Miller Hall was John on the floor, kind of where the tile and the carpet used to meet. And I saw what, at that time, I knew it wasn't right, but it looked like red wrapped candies to me. Later, I identified them as shotgun shells.
Okay. So, but at that moment, when you're sort of looking to your right, I think you said you saw John on top of somebody, is that right? Did you know who he was on top of? And when you say on top of, what do you mean by that? Can you describe that?
They were not laying completely on the ground, but they weren't standing either, somewhere in between. But it was an, half a second glance over. I did not identify the person that he was with, or I kind of was ignoring them. I knew Sarah was injured and she needed help.
Do you recall whether even in that moment you glanced over, it looked like there was a struggle, like people fighting, or was it literally one person on top of another?
No, it was one person on top of another, and I almost had the thought of maybe somebody else is injured and John is possibly, trying to help them, but I knew that Sarah was alone and she needed help, so.
And then I think you said that John was yelling something.
Yes.
No idea what?
No idea.
What was his tone of voice, do you remember?
Just yelling. I don't remember much else.
Okay.
I wasn't focused on him.
And then I think you said what looked at the time like a bunch of red candy, but later you identified them or determined they were shell casings. Okay. Where did you see those?
They were just all over the floor around John and whoever he was around. And I didn't recognize them right away, which is why I did not associate that John was with, with anybody that would have had a gun, or that the shooting had, that there was a possible active shooter in that area. I just was focused on Sarah.
So in that moment you glanced over, it didn't register what that was?
No, ma'am.
It just looked like candy to you? That's what
It was not until I was talking to the detectives later that night and pieced together different parts of the events that I figured out what it was.
Okay. I know it was just a moment, but in that moment when you looked over there, did you see the face of the person?
No.
That John was on top of?
Did not recognize.
Okay.
Did not see him in a sense of, did not see his face, did not make any note of what he was wearing.
Okay. So then you went directly to Sarah?
Yes.
And tell us what, you kind of said you walked with her. Tell us where you went and what happened.
We tried to walk back towards the hallway that I had come out of, and we did not make it very far before she collapsed down the wall and onto the floor, which is where I applied pressure to her wound and tried to keep her conscious and talking to me. Found out her name, her age, whether she had any medical allergies like penicillin, anything that might be important to paramedics whenever they arrived.
So had you known Sarah or met her before that day?
No, ma'am.
Was it just you and Sarah at this point?
Yes.
And you asked her if she was allergic to penicillin?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have medical training, or why did that come to your mind?
I used to work with kids, and some of the kids that I used to babysit were allergic to penicillin. I've also had friends who have had medical allergies, medical bracelets for different reasons, and so my mom was a first responder for a long time, so it was a natural thing for me to ask.
Okay. And then you said that you applied pressure to her wound, is that
Yes.
correct? Tell us what you saw.
I had a raincoat, so I took it off, and I also had a scarf. I took those off, and it was a large round wound in her upper right chest, if I recall correctly, and it was probably the size of $50 coin and probably half an inch deep.
Could you tell at that time whether she had any other injuries, or were you just focused?
I could not. Later, as I was talking to her, she was still laying on the floor. She kept saying, "My arm hurts."
But in terms of what you were trying to actually treat her,
No.
it was just that one on the chest. Okay. So then I think you said you were talking to her, is that right?
Yes.
What were you guys talking about?
I prayed with her. I talked to her asked her who she wanted me to call, just trying to keep her focused so that she wouldn't go into shock, hopefully, and that I could get whatever information might be useful for paramedics or whoever needs to know had something happened to her and she had died.
What, during this time that you're sort of just talking with her and trying to keep her conscious, did she say anything about what happened?
No. Well, she did keep saying, "I thought it was a joke." That was something she repeated many, many times.
But did she say anything other than like what she thought was a joke? She just said, "I thought it was a joke."
Yes.
Did she say anything about her injuries or other than "my arm hurts"?
No. She was scared. She kept repeating that she was scared as well.
She said she was scared.
Yes.
Okay. At any point, so was it just you and her until SWAT, I think you said, came? You said you called her Aunt Vickery. Are you making these phone calls right then?
At that time, I gave the phone to Chris, and he was attempting to call her mom and Aunt Vickery, and nobody was answering yet.
And so how are you guys? Is she able to give you like the phone numbers for these people?
No, we had her phone.
Okay. So you had her phone and you're calling, and I think you indicated he's leaving messages.
He wasn't leaving messages. I told him not to because I didn't want to incite more panic until somebody had arrived. Somebody who could help.
While you guys are doing this, at some point did you talk to any members of her family?
At one point I did finally get a hold of her mom. I don't remember if her mom called me or if I called her mom. And I let her know that Sarah was alive, but there had been a shooting and Sarah was injured. And then at that point, Sarah talked to her mom on the phone.
You actually put Sarah on the phone with her mom. Do you recall if Sarah said anything about what had happened when she talked to her mom, or what their conversation was
She
about?
just said that she had been shot and that she was really scared. She told her mom she loved her. All things along that line.
So this is all going on. What happens? When does somebody arrive to help y'all at some point?
At some point, a bunch of people arrived, it seemed, all at the same time. But there was a moment of, a gap of time that seemed like it was all very condensed. And I know SWAT arrived. I know SPU Safety and Security arrived. Ambulance workers arrived. They all kind of flooded the building. SWAT was escorting other students out around us. But before they had even done that, I heard that there was a possibility of a second shooter, so they were kind of securing the area. When the SPU Safety and Security officers arrived, they had a medic bag and they were taking gauze out, and they started applying pressure with my raincoat to her wound while I opened gauze pads for them. Chris and I opened gauze pads for them, and then they switched that out, and then Chris got up and left. They were taking, people out of the building, so he got up and left, and I don't know if he went to go help somebody else or what. It was all kind of, everything was happening all at once.
And let me ask you about that. So during the point you and Chris are with Sarah, what else is going on? Are you paying attention to, for instance, what's John doing?
I was out of line of sight for John. We were far enough down the hallway that I could not see John or anybody else in the front lobby. And I don't recall anyone else running around us or anything from the time that Sarah collapsed in the hallway to the time that, help arrived.
Okay. So you don't recall any other students or professors?
I don't recall any.
Is your first memory of who came next was basically SWAT, SPU security, and medics? Okay.
So they got one of those medical tarps that has the handles around it, and we placed her on it, and then we carried her out on it.
And you went out with them, is that
Yes,
right?
I had near her upper left shoulder, I was carrying that handle, and I grabbed her backpack and phone as well.
Did you yourself or hear anybody else in the time you were with Sarah talk about what happened or give a description of the...
When Safety and Security arrived and SWAT team arrived, at one point, at that point I knew that help had been there, so I did ask Sarah if she had seen who had shot her and if she had any description. For me, she repeated it to me, and then I repeated it to Safety and Security when they asked what she had said.
So when you said, had you seen the shooter, what did she tell you?
She told me that it looked like a mixed-race male, not Caucasian, and that he had a gun that was long and had brown on it.
So she had represented, yes, I saw the shooter, and kind of gave a description.
Yes.
And you told other people of that as well? Okay. So did she stay awake the whole time you
Yes,
were with
ma'am.
her? And you actually saw her then put in the back of the paramedic?
Yes, I helped take her, the medical tarp we lifted. Once we got her out near the ambulances, and they had a backboard, we lifted the medical tarp onto the backboard onto the gurney, and then I helped, I waited for them to load her in the ambulance. I asked if I could ride with her because she had nobody with her. One of the paramedics, he said no, so I asked where they were taking her so that I could meet her there, and I told her I'd meet her at the hospital.
Did you go to the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you end up telling her family what was going on, or did you talk to them again?
As soon as they had taken, told me that she was going to Harborview. I got near the entrance of the gymnasium, right there on that corner, and kind of moved out of the way, and then called her mom and said, they're taking her to Harborview. I'll be there whenever you get here. And she had told me that she had a plane ticket and they would be there in a few hours from Phoenix.
I mean, Ms. Chuck, what I actually want to do now is have you step down, and if you're willing, sort of just do a rough sketch of the building so we can understand sort of where you started with working on the project to the front of the building where you found Sarah.
So this is the back parking lot. There's the canal here. And there's all these spots. There's the door, and then this is the engineering lab. There's other rooms all the way down this hallway. This is the staircase, and there's a water fountain here, and there's some offices, some staff office, professor's offices that I was talking about. And this is where Sarah was standing. But we were in one of these parking lots. We were bringing equipment in and putting it in one of these two rooms. This is an engineering lab. This is a physics lab. This is kind of where that girl told me that there had been somebody was dead and there had been a shooting. This is the hallway that I ran. About here is where I saw Bree Clark. This is the front kind of security office, and this is the front entrance of the hall. John Meese and whoever he was on top of was over here. And then I got Sarah, and we landed about right here.
Okay, so for the record, don't put the pen away.
Yep.
Sorry, you're fine. We just want to make sure we understand later exactly sort of what you've drawn here.
Okay.
So can you just put like an EL for the engineering lab? And is that the room that has the big garage doors?
The garage door is on this side.
And why don't you put a HJ where you and your friend originally started and
Okay.
Okay, and that's out in the parking lot. When the girl came and was sort of said, somebody's dead, were you still in the parking lot or were you
We were right here inside this doorway. There's an elevator here and there's a doorway into the engineering lab, and that's where she was standing.
Okay, so you put a little X near that doorway inside the building where she first was?
Yes.
Okay. So then coming toward the front, you just basically ran down that hallway to the front.
And it was about here that I talked to Bree Clark, and we were just standing in the hallway. She ran back behind me, and I continued towards Sarah.
Okay. And for the record, you put a BC where you first saw Bree Clark?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just put a FD sort of to the front, the main entrance to Otto Miller Hall?
Yes.
And then you put another X. I think you said that's where you saw John on top of the man. You want to just put a J for John. And then go ahead and put an S where you first saw Sarah and she was sort of standing and holding her chest. Okay. And then you drew an arrow sort of toward the upper page. Why don't you put an H and an S where you guys ended up? And what's that big triangle or rectangle in the middle?
This is just the center classroom, so I'm showing that there's a hallway down that side.
Okay. And I'm going to have that marked eventually as State's Exhibit 2 for identification, and you can go ahead and have a seat, Ms. Judd. Thank you. Can I ask, how long do you think you were with Sarah until the SWAT, SPU, sort of the people descended?
I honestly have no idea how long that time frame was.
When you were walking out and you said, helping carry Sarah out to the medic van, did you walk by where John was or had been on top of the man?
Yes.
And what was he doing or what was going on then when you walked out?
I don't think anyone was still in that spot. However, my focus was still talking to Sarah and making sure she stayed conscious while we walked her out of the building. And I was carrying her backpack over my shoulder. I was carrying the tarp and I had her phone. So,
after the medics took Sarah, did you go immediately to Harborview?
Yes, I walked back towards Otto Miller Hall. I found somebody who had keys on them and had a car that we could get out, and he drove me to Harborview Hospital, where I waited in the emergency room, like waiting room.
So at any point at that time, did you have a visual or sort of recall having an observation of the man that John was with?
No.
And to your understanding, did you have any contact or viewing of the shooter in the case?
Other than John Meeks being on top of them, no.
Let me ask, when you were out back working on your project, do you remember anything unusual that happened prior to the shooting?
No.
Let me ask you, Judge, have you seen any of the video surveillance footage from what happened that day?
I was at somebody's house, and the surveillance video that news media has been showing of John tackling the shooter was playing, but past that I have not watched any of the surveillance video.
Okay. So you haven't seen anything of the shooting that occurred or anything else? Ms. Judd, I think that is all the questions I have for you today.
Thank you.
Defense has no questions.
Thank you.
This concludes the video deposition of Hannah Judd. This is Media Unit 1, Volume 1. We are going off record. Time now is 9:35 a.m.
All right, we will take our afternoon break, so we leave your notebooks on the chairs. We'll have a few minutes. Continue with more witnesses.